Hi everyone, it's Lindsay and welcome back to another video. Today I want to share a few tips and tricks while we make a card. I'm going to be joining Clair Stamps and the Cutting Cafe today. But first, I want to remind you to follow me across social media if you haven't already. Those links will be in the description box below. Also, while you're down there, you can subscribe to my channel and like this video if you enjoy my content. Alright, so I am going to start with this stamp set. This is called Going Places and it is from Clair Stamps. This reminds me a lot of like a Dr. Seuss type of theme, and it's perfect for graduation cards, which you're going to need coming up. Now, I went ahead and used the Polaroid and camera fun set from the Cutting Cafe. This has PDF files in it. I do not have an electronic cutting machine, so I just printed off the PDFs onto white cardstock and then cut out those Polaroid frames. I went ahead and also cut some watercolor squares that fit behind them, and that's where I'm going to do my stamping. So I'm going to make some little pictures. I'm using those two little balloons and I've got them in my mini Misty, and I'm using creative corners to push that away from the side so I get a really good impression. I'm also using VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink so I can go ahead and heat emboss these with some clear embossing powder. One of my favorite things to do when I know I'm going to watercolor is to heat emboss, whether it be with clear or black embossing powder. It just gives me a nice little well so my colors don't run together and I can be very quick about putting my color down. Now on that smaller one, I did the two balloons, and then on this larger square that fits behind the larger Polaroid frame, I'll go ahead and stamp this large hot air balloon. I'm stamping it at a bit of an angle so it looks like it's flying through the air, again using that same VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink, and then of course I did heat emboss those with some clear embossing powder. So next I'm going to go ahead and do my coloring. Now I really sped this up. I am using Arteza water, the real brush markers and the water brush pens to blend them out. I went ahead and did do all my stamping on the Arteza watercolor paper. That's what works best for me, but use whatever paper works best for you. I know a lot of people said the Bristol Smooth works really well for them, so that's another option. I like to lay down a little bit of color, blend it out, and then I feel like if it needs a little bit more, I put a little bit down onto my craft mat and go in and blend that out as well. I am no watercolor artist at all, but I do try my best, and this is what works best for me. I'm going to list the colors down in the bottom left-hand corner, so if you have Arteza, you want to pick these colors out as well, you can see exactly what I used. For the little basket, I'm using some chocolate and just blending that out. It doesn't take a lot of color because it's very small. And then I'll go ahead and pick out some colors for the top of the hot air balloon. Now again, I wanted to go with kind of the Dr. Seuss theme here, so I went with very bright, bold colors. Now, if you're creating this for a graduation card and you wanted to switch it up, you could use school colors, anything like that, but I just wanted to go with that Dr. Seuss theme. So again, I chose some really bright colors. I'm going to go ahead and blend in some orange on every other little space on top of the balloon. And then I'm also using some light green on the other two spaces on the balloon. This is where it really comes in handy, having that embossing powder down. I don't have to wait for each section to dry. It's all just going to stay in its own little place because it has that nice raised edge from the embossing, which acts as a little reservoir to keep everything in its place. Now I went outside the lines a little bit, so what I like to do is wet that down with some water and then come in with a clean cloth and blot it up. That takes away all the color, so watercolor I think is very forgiving when you go outside the lines, or if you have a little bit of a mistake, you can really easily get that up. I'll go ahead and blend these out very, very quickly. It doesn't take a whole lot of water to get these colors moving. They're very pigmented. And then I set those aside just for a second to dry. Now once I had the actual images colored in, I wanted to go ahead and add something to separate them from the frames. So what I decided to do was take that light blue color that I used on the balloon and I put some of it down onto my craft mat. You can use a palette, whatever you have on hand. And acrylic black also works really well. I'm going to add quite a bit of water to this and dilute it down quite a bit and make a very, very, very light wash of blue. Then I'll add that all around my images. I don't want a ton of color here. It's actually going to look like I'm not adding anything at all by the time I blend it out. But once it's up against those white frames, you'll really be able to notice the difference, and it's just going to help separate them. Now with this, because it is a sky background, I didn't go with blending very much. I wanted this to be a little bit not flat. I wanted to have a little bit of texture and a little bit of dimension when I put this color down. So I didn't really work it a whole lot, just kind of let it sit. There's a closer look at how it looks on the actual background. There you can see it's got that separation from the white frame to just that very light blue sky, which is really nice. So whenever I don't know what to do with the background and I want it to still be simple, I don't want to add any more color, I like to add texture. So I grabbed one of my embossing folders. I wanted to keep it, again, very simple. So this just has two different styles of dots on it, and I ran that through my embossing machine with some craft cardstock. That is a great way to add dimension, texture, but not anything flashy to your backgrounds. When you really want something else to be the focal point, it's just a great little addition. And now my background isn't so flat. I really felt like it was too clean and simple, so that was the perfect little addition. Now to put these frames together, I just attached some double-sided adhesive to all four sides of the opening on the back of the little Polaroid frames, and just kind of pick up the little squares that I made. I did make those slightly bigger than the hole itself, so they have a nice place to attach. I used a double-sided adhesive for this, but a liquid adhesive would also be really good and allow you that little bit of play time to move them around. I went ahead and added some double-sided adhesive to the back of my piece of craft cardstock that I did with my embossing folder. Pop that on the front of an A2 side folding white card base. Then I went ahead and stamped on my sentiment before I added those Polaroid frames. I used the congratulations sentiment from the Going Places stamp set, the same one I used to stamp my images, and I used the same VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink. I stamped it on the largest Polaroid frame off to the left-hand side, and it's just adorable. This is going to make the perfect graduation card. So to add the Polaroid frames, I did use some foam tape on the back of them to give them some dimension, and I layered them up one on top of the other. So I put the largest down first, and then I overlaid the smallest one on top, and I used foam tape and double-sided adhesive on the back of that to put it on the same level. To finish off the card, I used some black enamel accents on the front, and then I also finished off the inside of the card. I stamped another image from the Going Places stamp set and colored it in very quickly with my alcohol markers. I did do that on a separate panel as well and then glued it on the inside. That way I didn't have any bleed through to the back of the card. One last look at the outside of the card, and that is going to do it for me today. There are going to be links on the left side of your screen you can click on. Don't forget all the information down in the description box. Thanks for watching and happy crafting.